What's good, world? How y'all doing? What's going on? What's going on? My name is Austin.
My name is Josiah.
And we are the
Luke
Floater
Cinema
Bros.
Oh,
Bros. Yeah. Cinema bros. Yeah. What's going on, Josiah? How you doing?
Hey, I'm doing well. It's
all right.
It's a nice cool day here in January of 2024.
Happy New Year, everybody. Happy New Year. If you're listening to this, whenever you're listening to this, Happy New Year's. Hope you and your families are blessed. It's going to be a great year, and we're happy to be a part of yours. So thanks for coming back. And Mr. Josiah, what do we have on the docket today?
All right, so today we are actually talking about a couple different films, doing a little bit of a back-to-back. Two Japanese films that we wound up watching in December. The Boy and the Heron, we're going to open it up with, and then we're going to talk about Gojira -1. But this first one, Boy and the Heron. So, I'll give us a little breakdown of this film. It's been like a month or so since I've watched it myself. But, let's just let you guys know what this is about. All right, so film made by Studio Ghibli, world-renowned for everything. You guys know what they've made. You guys know who's made it. This is Miyazaki. He's come back to it. He's not said he's retiring again. Whether this is the last one or not, we'll see. But this one, Boy and the Heron, from what I understand, at a glance, as far as information goes on this film, I think there's very personal elements from Miyazaki's own life within this film. But for the film itself, separate from that, it starts off during the Pacific War in Tokyo. We meet this boy named Mahiko, and immediately we're tossed into the story where there's a fire that happens. Fire where his mom is at. He goes to save his mother, but unfortunately we find that his mother has not been saved. So he's living with his father, who is a rich, I would say like war profiteer, I guess, but that's probably the most literal way to describe it. He's not actively on the field, but he seems to be producing, whether it's munitions or plane parts or whatever. Yeah, it's stuff that's for the war effort. But anyways, so meet his father. His mother has passed. They're living in I guess Tokyo, but then they move out to the countryside. His father introduces him to his new wife. That we'll find out more later on. Suichi's the father. Mahiko himself is, processing it. He winds up in here. He winds up noting that she looks just like his mother who has passed. And from that point, we discover that they have gone to live at her estate. And the father has a warehouse nearby, near the estate, that is producing whatever the next project is for them to live and make money. Mahiko then gets incorporated into school system nearby. We do wind up meeting. There's like a household of like older ladies, older maids that help work with the mom, help tend to everybody. But Mahiko winds up going to school and then gets in a fight. Because he's a little rich kid and people are picking on him for that. Yeah, he winds up coming back and he's really holding everything back. Like he's disguising that he was in a fight from his father and from his, stepmother. And then he eventually winds up kind of like journeying around the immediate neighborhood. and discovers this like older castle sort of looking building. Finds out that it's the grand uncles, grand uncles of his mother and well of Natsuko, the stepmother. Finds his way inside it. It seems like it was kind of like closed off. That winds up like kickstarting part of the journey. But before that, yes, we meet the titular character Heron. It's this bird that seems bizarre and eventually winds up like directly communicating with him and telling him that he has a way to bring his mother back or for him to meet his mother again if he winds up going to this castle. And that's kind of how he winds up making on over there. Makes it over there eventually after several sequences of kind of going to the castle, coming back, having the heron come back and talk to him and tease him and kind of be sort of antagonistic, but also trying to bring him to that place because he tells him that there's this wizard that lived there, which is the granduncle was a wizard. So eventually he winds up getting inside the castle, going inside the castle with one of the maids, older ladies, Kiriko, I believe, and they essentially get kick-started into the fantastical world of things. They get like pulled through the floor eventually of once Maiko winds up fighting the heron. Heron's kind of like deceiving him into believing that he's met his mom. But yeah, falls through the floor. They get pulled into this other realm. He gets separated from the old maid Kiriko. Eventually winds up having to work directly with the heron because the wizard shows up right before they get pulled through the floor and says like, you gotta lead them, you gotta guide them, more or less. Number of various different fantastical things wind up happening. They go to different locations. They meet strange, classic Ghibli little creatures that are embodiment of this, that, and the other. There's antagonistic moments and threats, and yeah, he meets a lady that rescues him from a bunch of pelicans because there's a bunch of birds that push him through a gate he's not supposed to go through, and then this lady comes off the shore and saves him, and then he meets some other little creatures that embody that are like basically spirits trying to then enter the world, like to rise up through the air and breach some sort of gateway to then become a living being inside of the real world. But the pelicans are feasting on them, so they wind up meeting another girl, Himi, that like saves a good number of these little spirits from being eaten. Eventually they find themselves up against a bunch of sort of like antagonistic giant anthropomorphic parakeets, and then they discover the sorcerer himself, the grand uncle that's in there keeping the world at balance through these little wooden toy blocks. And then we find out that the parakeet king wants to take over from the wizard and take his power and take his throne, and the wizard offers for Maiko to take over his position of balancing the universe, basically. And then he kind of rejects it because the pieces have malice, so the wizard finds pieces that don't have malice. And then Maiko sort of like rejects it again and is like, I have malice inside me. I injured myself to mask that I was being bullied by kids at school from my family. But along the way, they also wind up discovering that Mahiko's stepmother is there and she's being held against her will, and she's about to deliver the baby that's going to be his half sibling. And they figure out a way to save her. And then just as that winds up happening, the Parakeet King just tosses everything into chaos by destroying these toy blocks that hold everything in the balance. And then the world's gonna collapse. So they gotta all the worlds and all the gateways to all the worlds are gonna collapse. So they gotta escape back into the regular world. So they do, and then right before they do, Himiko's like, I was your mom. And he's like, wait a second, you're gonna go through that portal and then you're gonna wind up dying. And she's like, I'm fine with that because I'm a being of fire, and I don't have any fear of that happening, and I love knowing you. So on and so forth. He goes back, he winds up having saved his stepmother, and then they wind up living kind of in peace afterwards. Him and his stepmother and his father moved back to Tokyo, and yeah, that's kind of how it winds up ending. So, I tried to cut that down, but it's a number of things that I glazed over a number of things. You definitely know. We'll talk about some of them. So, what do you think about that, Austin?
Spoiler alert.
Oops.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
yeah, yeah. I think we should have said that before. I meant to, and then it didn't happen. That's okay.
It's been a month. Look, I think
It's been
at some point, yes, we will have our videos come out like maybe even before the general populace or something like that. We'll see. And for then, for sure, the spoiler alert is going to be most important. At this point, it's like we almost view these reviews as like, yeah, discussions after everybody's seen everything. You just want to come on by and hear opinions and banter and like, yeah,
right. They're like retrospectives. You know what I mean?
yeah, exactly.
All right. So, Mr. Josiah, what did let's see. Let's start with what did not work for you in this movie?
Okay. Biggest thing that didn't work for me was that it's both positive and negative, but overall, I felt like okay, Mahiko was maybe is he we don't know 100% how old he is, or maybe at some point we do find out how old he specifically is. He looks like he could be 8 or 9, maybe even up to 10, but I feel like he acts like a kid that's maybe 4 or 5 years older. Um,
I was thinking he
that's
was like between 10 and 12 years old, but I could be wrong.
okay. Yeah, which like yeah, that's a hard thing for me to say though. I do appreciate his character overall not being the same as every other sort of animated character that's that age where they're just like bouncing off the wall, exuberant, completely strong-headed, outspoken, buffoon in a lot of ways. So I appreciate the difference in his character, but I think um I feel like I could feel, which is yet again, if this is Ghibli's more personal story, it's fair. I feel like I feel the writing and like mindset and of adult behind the character that's much younger. Like there's other films that potentially represent a kid of that age better, but that's kind of one of my critiques. I'm not saying that's exactly the way the situation is, but that's kind of how I wound up perceiving it. Um, Other thing that didn't wind up working as much was
Hmm.
as far as the events that develop feels kind of scattershot. What happens, who they meet, when they meet them. Miyazaki himself, I think, from what I understand, winds up creating these stories, has a framework, I think has an understanding of where he wants to go. But I definitely do think he sort of like writes the movie as he's boarding it out, which I think is leads to this almost like flow stream of consciousness kind of a storytelling that it is. And so a bunch of random things feels like random things are happening and the pacing isn't necessarily tight. It's not an engineered, architected story that keeps everything tight and concise. I think it's meandering, but it gets placed. But it just has that feel of meandering and randomness. Um, Now, actually, while I was saying that, I think my greatest critique is it'll get into the theme, and I guess we'll mention the theme a little bit. I think there's a number of relationships in here that are very important that he doesn't necessarily we don't really get very much time with ultimately. We get time with I feel like important characters, but the most important characters like his relationship with his mom and his like stepmother, I don't feel like we got enough time with ultimately. So yeah, I'll leave it at that. How about you, Austin?
Oh no, we're not ready for me yet. Before I ask you what you did like, let's explore a little bit. What do you think the themes and the
Okay.
kind of the motifs of the film are?
Hmm. Yeah, I'd say overall grandest one is this kid's wrestling with loss, grief, um, of his mother, the distance of his father, and then grappling with having his mom uh, essentially replaced suddenly, very suddenly, and coming to thoughts, understandings, feelings on that. And so it's a journey of him coming to, in my opinion, of him coming to let his mother go, maybe recognize like who she is, and find a place for him, like for her in his heart, but then move forward and wrestle with having been given a new mom who turns out to be, yeah, someone important to his mom as well. Um, so yeah, it's like it's yet again. That's so for Mahiko. I'd have to think a little bit about like the specific themes for like the Heron as well. But yeah, I think it's completely entangled with this grief and the process of not getting over necessarily, but accepting the reality, accepting the state of what life is now in relation to his mom, and then in relation with his stepmother, and to a much lesser degree his father, and then in this potential sibling, we get a little bit of that too. But yeah,
All right. Now, Mr. Josiah, what did you like about this movie? What do you think worked with this film?
there's a good amount of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that I do like about this film. I mean, one can say easily the animation, the visual. Like I heard that there are some critiques on like the backgrounds not being as amazing as it has been in the past with Ghibli. I did still find most of the backgrounds beautiful, most of the animation beautiful. Um, the Heron had some cool weird transformations and like half states when he was between being a heron and Birdman. Um, I really appreciate that the main character, like I was saying, was tied to a negative, but that isn't just the standard main character that we get most of the time uh, when it comes to an animated youth, within animation. So the fact that this kid is going through this trauma, going through this grief, um, I can appreciate. Yeah. He was like way more decisive of a character than I could expect almost from reality, but I appreciate that even as well. Um, I loved the music. Joe, he says she's always killing it. His piano work is always phenomenal. Yeah, it's just this is unbelievable. Animation during the fire at the beginning when Mahiko is found out that his mother is in this burning warehouse, and he is immediately like decisively running from where he's at to go and find his mom. They do some experimental animation with like blurring of people and Mahiko. It's kind of like there's all these after images, and it's just a chaotic, very cool looking sequence that I was hoping to see more of as the movie went on, but didn't show up. But it in it itself was phenomenal. Uh, it it was truly a stunning sequence visually, And I think the concept of what that they were trying to get, the feelings and emotions they were trying to get across with it was powerful as well. Mm, yeah, I'd say that's probably there's some characters that I wound up really liking. The maid, Kiriko, all the maids, yeah, they have that classic Ghibli, like, strange old lady look where they're like, they've got big heads and almost almost don't even look like fully humans anymore. I mean, they do, but yeah, he makes them into like these sort of like bizarre, almost bizarre looking creatures that are like kind of following and wafting around from here and there, and they have an intrigue about them. Um, they're always like staring and looking and interacting with each other in little fun animated ways. I do like all those kind of elements in these Ghibli films. There's just a true depth of charisma that come from a number of characters, creatures, and things. Um, as weird as it is, I think a number of the birds and like parakeets are fun. Yeah, I mean, most of my likes I think come down to animation, uh, some of the themings and representation of characters that is like a bit non-traditional, and I can appreciate the sort of like straight ahead storytelling while I do have fault with it. So there's a uniqueness overall to the film. Um, overall, that I think is pretty entertaining. That said, nowhere near a favorite Ghibli movie, but yeah, beautiful. Beautiful in a number of ways. Anyways, let me kick it on over to you, Austin. I feel like I could go on, but I would probably just be talking in circles at this point.
All right. What can I say about this film? This movie put me to sleep at least 3 times that I can remember. I thought this movie was boring. Oh my gosh. I like the first 10 minutes of the movie, I'm already straining. There's like no music after the whole fire scene, and stuff's just happening, but it's not particularly interesting. And it's just slow. Oh my gosh, this movie is slow. Oh man, there is a whole lot of nothing. So yeah, this movie was a miss for me. Let me talk about a few things. Number one, the English title of the movie, The Boy and the Heron. Okay, number one, this has nothing to do with the movie, but if you're an 80s baby and you grew up during the golden age of hip hop, you hear the word heron, you think of one thing, and that's heron blunts. That's weed. That's marijuana. So every time I say this movie title, The Boy and the Heron, I'm like, it's The Boy and the Heron blunts. What's a kid doing smoking heron blunts? I'm not in favor of that. I don't support that. I don't endorse that. Hayao Miyazaki,
Yeah.
what's wrong with you, bro? I mean, really, I mean, it would have been better if they just called it The Boy and the Bird. That would have been a better title. Like, nobody really knows what a heron is unless you're into birds in the first place. And
Yeah.
really, if you translate the Japanese title, it's the Japanese title is Kimitachi wa do ikiru ka, which means how do you live? It was based on and this movie is actually based on, or it's the title references a 1937 novel of the same name by Ginzaburo Yoshino, and it appears in the film. Um, but the film itself has a story that's kind of disconnected from the book. And so it kind of references it, but then it goes in its own direction. But it would have been just as easy for, whoever came up with the title to just call it How Do You Live? Or you call it Hayao Miyazaki's How Do You Live? Or whatever, Ghibli's How Do You Live? I really don't like how Americans change the titles of movies. Now, to be fair, I
Yeah.
mean, I lived in Japan, and there were plenty of American movies that have a very separate, specific Japanese title, and it generally serves to be like a very brief summary of what to expect when you watch the movie, or a summary of what it is, or what the main theme is, or something like that. And so, America is not the only country that does it, or the West in general. They're not the only ones that do this, but I feel like when they do it, it's just more egregious, and it bothers me. And if they left it, if they left the title "How Do You Live," like, it would have put you in a different headspace, because like the heron, the bird in this movie, is a character and a comic foil and something of a MacGuffin, but he's not really the point of the movie. You know what I mean? He's just kind of helping the main character
Yeah.
get from point A to point B to C to D to E to F to G to X to Y to Z.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so it almost doesn't make sense to like say The Boy and the Heron in one regard, because it's not about their adventure per se. It's more about the boy's adventure and trying to figure out what he's going to do. Now, like I said, I zonked out like the last 15 minutes of the movie. I had to ask my friend to summarize and recap it for me, because I didn't remember half the stuff that was happening. I was like, wow, that
Yeah.
happened. Oh, that's something. It did not hold my attention. I was at a movie theater that had those reclining chairs, and that was bad news for me in watching this movie. I was like, I'm way too comfortable, and this movie is way too slow.
I definitely been there. And
I went full Grandpa Simpson. That was it. I was gone. It was inconsolable. Okay. I mean, on the plus side, this movie did wonders for my circadian rhythms. I got to give it credit for that. I'm so happy, man. I mean, I haven't gotten such good
reset yourself a little bit.
Oh my gosh, dude!
Daylight savings had thrown you off a month before.
Oh my god,
this movie helps you get back.
Yeah, dude. I mean, we're talking total chakra reset. You know what I'm saying? Oh, anyway. Okay, here's my other issue with the movie. And here's my quintessential critique of the movie, and the biggest problem that I had with the movie, aside from the fact that it just did not hold my attention. The parts that I do remember, take for example, the arrow and the whole thing about the arrow that he built, right?
Yes.
The arrow thing was done way better in Princess Mononoke. Let's talk about going into another mystical, magical world. That was done way better in Spirited Away. It was done way better in Howl's Moving Castle.
Fair. Yeah.
The backgrounds, all of the movies, and plus a bunch of other movies, including like Ponyo. Oh man, like they just had such beautiful, lush backgrounds and environments. And this movie seemed very drab and understated by comparison. The little marshmallow creatures that the herons, the seagulls,
Wada.
pelicans, the wada wada. I mean, yeah, they were cute, but like that whole little like look at the cute little thing again, done better. Princess Mononoke, the little
yeah,
the little head clicking things. It was just done better and to better effect. And so, I'm watching this movie and I'm just watching like a lesser version of Totoro, a lesser version of The Wind Rises, a lesser version of Princess Mononoke, a lesser version of Spirited Away, a lesser version of Howl's Moving Castle. Howl's Moving Castle, up to this point, was my least favorite Ghibli movie, mostly on account of like that ending that they just completely pulled it out of their hind parts, right? Like it was like, what? It's over now. Wait, what?
I don't even remember. Yeah.
It's almost completely incoherent. And the movie itself is fine. It's a bit confusing, but like to have that abrupt ending was just like, what's going on? And again, that was based on a book that was written by somebody else. I think what I'm getting at is like when Hayao Miyazaki is taking such inspiration from a pre-existing work, I feel like it suffers. The end result, the end product suffers. I feel like when he just has his story to tell, he flourishes. And so the parts that I watched, I just felt like I was watching lesser versions of other Ghibli movies that I enjoyed more, and that was disappointing. Now I have to remember this man is what 82, 83 years old. I don't know exactly how old Hayao Miyazaki is, but I don't. I almost don't blame him for like retreading familiar territory. You know, I'm not mad at him for that. Having said that, though, I, I don't know if he was just going to do that. So he's 83 right now. As of today, he's 83 years old. If he was going to do that, then like I mean, did you really need to make another movie? Like, what does Hayao Miyazaki have to prove to anybody? He is the premier, animator in Japan right now. His track record is like near flawless. Uh, he has presided over some of the most highest box office grossing films in Japanese history. And he's the direct inspiration for what I believe to be his true successor, which is Makoto Shinkai, the director of Your Name, Weathering with You, and Suzume, which we reviewed earlier.
Yeah.
I don't know what the motivation for this was, other than for him to have a cure for his own boredom, because he didn't want to retire and he didn't know what else to do with his time. That's how it comes across to me. It was just like, to me, there wasn't enough there. Conceptually, it's just like there's just a bunch of stuff going on, and I don't care enough about any of this stuff. And the movie was simply the sum of its parts. It wasn't anything greater than that, in my estimation. And so, I mean, the parts that I was awake for, it was just kind of like, this is kind of slow. This is kind of dragging. I'm not enjoying myself. And that's not the way I felt when I watched Spirited Away. That's not the way I felt when I watched Totoro. That's definitely not the way I felt when I was watching Princess Mononoke. I think Princess Mononoke is probably my personal favorite Ghibli movie. And so I wanted to like this movie. I was excited for this movie. I stayed away from watching previews of the movie. I wanted it to stand on its own. And I zonked out. What else do you say? Like, you fall asleep at least 3 times in the movie. The last time I fell asleep in a movie like this, I believe it was the third installment of Pirates of the Caribbean, and that was on opening night. I mean, full disclosure, I am not a fan of the Pirates of the Caribbean movies. It just, I haven't been able to watch one of them that I actually enjoyed. But that third one, I mean, it had some cool scenes, but it's like, yeah, this movie had the same effect on me. I just kind of like, I was just, you know, yeah, Joe Hisaishi, he's always consistent. He's always dependable. Again, I feel that he some of his other film scores were just dwarf this by leaps and bounds. Princess Mononoke, Spirited Away, even the playfulness of Totoro. I mean, just like the score that was composed for Porco Rosso, which is one of my all-time favorites as well.
That movie.
Actually, that's probably a tie for me between Porco Rosso and Princess Mononoke. I really like those.
Yeah, two strong, very strong candidates. Yep.
And upon a second viewing of The Wind Rises, for context, that was the last film I watched before I left Japan, so it had kind of a sentimental value. But man, upon a second viewing where I had the benefit of subtitles and can really understand what was going on, like, oh, this is a brilliant movie. I really like this. I really like, it has its fantastical elements, but it was very much grounded in reality. And so I believe it was.
I was going to watch that one.
Yeah, I actually really enjoyed it. So, yeah, I'm disappointed, but at the same time, it's like he's 83 years old. Like he's done he's made his contribution to the world. And this film, although it was a miss for me, it's like, yeah, but whatever. Like, he made Mononoke,
Yeah.
Mononoke though. So yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. What? So okay. What do you? What do you? I hear what you're saying, Austin. Now, are there any What do you see as the themes of this film?
I think it was like, again, dealing with loss. I think you kind of said the same thing. Like it was dealing with loss. It was, you know, kind of cracking a mystery. What's going on with this grand uncle? What did he find?
Mhm.
What's the significance of it? And you know, kind of the embrace of the unknown and the fantastical.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, again, another thing that like you mentioned, and I noticed it too, and it kind of distracted me a little bit. It was like the grandmas that didn't look quite like human beings. They're just kind of like these they looked like these little like these lava monsters, but with skin. They just kind of like floppy, like they look like that one purple sludge Pokemon. You know what I'm talking about from the original
Nah.
51. And like
Oh, you're
kind of
talking
that,
about was that Grimer or
yeah, Grimer. They had kind of like these weird proportions, and I'm like, are they supposed to be like real people or like what's going on, right? Um,
I thought that was the start of the sort of fantastical world, but it turned out they were actually just real
they,
ladies. Yeah.
yeah, and when you have the boy that looks like a real person and other characters that look real, for them to look so like not real was kind of jarring. I was like, yeah, this is kind of taking me out of it.
Mm.
There was parts I remember where he was like sleeping under a table, and the lady was cooking for him. She was staying in her house, and like they had the little gnomes that were like, she said something about them guarding. Like don't touch them, don't bother them, just leave them where they're at.
Right.
Like,
Yes.
but like that didn't seem to like to me when you set that up in a movie, it's guaranteed that someone's gonna knock it down. You're gonna knock the 4-leaf clover off the box, and the leprechaun's gonna pop out. You know what I mean?
Indeed. Indeed.
And they
Yeah.
didn't really do anything with that. I'm like, all right, well, why did you even set that up if that wasn't gonna become a plot point?
It's true.
Not
Yeah, he
big, not the
does
biggest
like
deal, but
trap
like,
the little one
yeah,
that looks like Kiriko, which wound up being a the necessity to rescue her, unbeknownst to them.
yeah, 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 bro. I guess, yeah, you remember better than me.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, 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 yeah. Again, I would have almost preferred it to just be like this kind of open ended, kind of choose your own adventure, the way that Spirited Away felt. Like Chihiro, she was just kind of doing things, and there was kind of a rhyme and reason to it. I mean, at some point, she wants to like turn her parents back into humans because they were pigs, but you almost kind of forgot about that in a kind of a fun, wistful way. She was just kind of doing things and going on an adventure and experiencing these new environments and dealing with these new creatures. And she made a friend, the boy that was the dragon, and there was some interaction, not interaction, but there was a relationship that was formed between them, and there was a drama that was going on separately with the dragon. He was fighting this other entity, and it was like, okay, this is cool. And then at some point, she's with like this little phantom spirit, and they're just on a train going across the water. And it was so pleasant. It was so nice. And it was just like, I have no idea what's going to happen next, but I'm fascinated. And whatever it is, I'm down. I'm down. This could go anywhere. And it just kind of almost haphazardly kind of found its way back to its original conflict, which I'm stuck in a world and I have to save my parents. Well, you kind of almost forgot about that towards until the end, where it kind of brings it back into focus. And yeah, I think what you were saying about this movie being a bit more linear and just kind of like straightforward, I think that's true. But I almost feel like that's playing against Miyazaki's strengths as a storyteller. Like if you watch Totoro, like it is just a whole bunch of happenstance. The kid's doing something with like this big fluffy raccoon, bear, badger, something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And they're just kind of having fun, and then the little girl goes missing, and then they gotta find her, and then the mom's in the hospital. I mean, the plot kind of takes form as it goes along, but like really, like in that movie, for like the first 35 minutes, you don't even see Totoro. You just see these little girls exploring their environment, exploring their house, playing with the little dust mite spirits, and just having fun and just being cute little kids, and it's delightful. Shoot, I mean, I mean,
This
okay,
movie
so
does have that meandering. It does, it did take its time and
it definitely took its time.
right places.
Yeah, to me, it just was it didn't add up, you know. And in fairness, I would have to argue that like Princess Mononoke is a more straightforward story
Mm,
with a clear, there's a clear goal. The guy gets poisoned, and there's a big spirit, and they have to figure out what's going on. He has to get healed, you know. But even that's like you have no idea, like, whoa, these boars, they talk and they're gonna fight and they got their own agenda and all this stuff is happening. It's like, the ore, the iron ore refinery place, and the women are working and the guys are having to do this, and like it's just like it just creates this whole world in that particular
yeah.
movie. And I don't know what it was. I just felt like that was missing
So
in this movie
let
for
me
me.
ask then, yeah, what did you think about Mahiko? Because I feel like what you're saying is in all these other Ghibli films, you came to like the main characters and like being with the main characters on their journeys, whether they were straightforward or yeah, or not as straightforward. I mean, it's
Yeah.
plainly and simple. I mean, this story with Mahiko and with Chihiro from Spirit Away, they're both kids on their own, needing to grow, to overcome something or to reach a or to just to grow. Period. In life, because that's what they need to do to get to the end
Right.
point. But yeah. So what do you think about Mahiko himself in this movie?
He's a fine character. I mean, I kind of feel like he's kind of like the generic headstrong. He's smart, but he's headstrong, and he's fiercely determined, and you can't tell him anything, you know. Um, and so he was just gonna forge his path, and that's fine. I don't have a problem with that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I just yeah, it just for a character that headstrong, I just felt like the film didn't move quickly enough. And by the time it started moving quickly, I was already incapacitated, and so I think I think
Sure.
I think it revved up a bit too slow, and
Yeah.
there wasn't enough charm and intrigue, and it wasn't beautiful enough to kind of capture and keep my attention and capture my imagination. It's been years since I've seen Kiki's Delivery Service, but I just remember like she was just a really cute, endearing little witch, and at some point she had to like figure out how to fly, use her broom. Again, I don't even remember the central conflict in that movie. But I just remember it was like, oh man, this is just so relaxing and fun to watch.
Yeah.
Um, and so, I mean, even with Howl's Moving Castle, which again is now my second least favorite Ghibli film. Um, Again, like what it
Yeah.
lacked in like fun playfulness because it was just kind of weird, in ways that were interesting, but kind of like,
Mm,
all right, where are we going? What's happening? And this plot's going all over the place. It was still breathtakingly beautiful to look at.
yeah.
They're in like the big grassy fields. It's just like, and the mechanical nature of those aircraft that were like flying like birds and stuff, and just the movement of everything was really good. So there's things about that movie that captured me and kept my attention. And
Mhm.
I don't know, I just like this movie just did not hold my attention.
Mm.
Um,
Mhm.
and so yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly what it was
Do you think
specifically.
you enjoyed or, did not enjoy seeing Mahiko, like, interacting with, everybody, especially with the heron?
Yeah, maybe not. Like at first, I thought the heron had like a gigantic tumor coming out of its beak. It just turned out it was the character's nose, and maybe that character needed to be a little more serious. He was too much of like a comic foil, just kind of like, you know, he was too much like Daffy Duck or something like that. He was just too silly and goofy, and juxtaposed to it was a Mahito or Maiko, I think it's Mahito. Juxtaposed to him, it was just more jarring than anything. I mean, there are a couple cute moments where like he knocks out the birds, and they escape and they're running away and stuff. But I don't know, the payoffs just weren't there for me in this movie. I became less and less invested. Like, is he gonna find his mom? Is he not? And then he finds like the architect, and he's responsible for the Matrix now. I'm like, all right, like,
Yeah, yeah,
like
that
put
happens.
these stack these blocks up or something. I'm like,
Uh-huh.
all right. And here's a big giant, a big giant stone, big giant stone. I'm like, all right. Um, yeah, I don't know, man. It just did not come together for me.
I hear you, man.
I don't.
I hear you. Okay. Now
Yeah.
let me get to what you liked about the film.
So what I'll say is, even here's the thing, like the animation is good, but it's not the best that Ghibli's done. It's not the best that Hayao Miyazaki's done. The music is good, but it's not the best score that Joe Hisaishi has done.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm like, it's kind of like it's what you expect from a Ghibli movie. You expect it to have really good animation, and it
yeah,
did.
yeah.
And so it's like, but it wasn't anything that blew me away. And maybe I'm falling victim to my own nostalgia, because the first time I saw Princess Mononoke, I was like, oh my goodness, what am I watching right now?
Oh, yeah. I remember
For context,
100%.
yeah,
Yep.
for context, I saw Princess Mononoke when I was 16 years old at the San Diego Comic-Con in one of the major halls. I don't know if it was Hall H or it was one of the major ones. And it was a room full of people. It was we were all standing. It was standing room only, and it was like the American premiere of Princess Mononoke. And we all watched this movie on the big projector with our mouths aghast. Like, we couldn't believe what we were watching. This was the craziest, most amazing thing. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, this is a room full of people that grew up on Hanna-Barbera, Warner Brothers, and Disney. You know,
Yep.
and we're watching this. We're like, it was the same feeling I got the first time I watched Akira. You know, and I saw that movie right around the same. It was in the same phase of life. I was in my teens,
Mhm.
and I was like, bro, America lied to me. This is what a cartoon could be. This is what animation could be. Are you
Yeah.
kidding me?
Oh,
I've
no.
been watching my whole life. It was like a revelation to me. So, like, if I weigh that feeling in that moment where the world, where the West first bore witness to Princess Mononoke, and I'm comparing the Boy and the Heron to that, it's not a fair comparison. But at the same time, it's like, it's just retreading ground that's already been tread by other superior Ghibli movies. So yeah, I mean, the things I like, yeah, the animation is good. Particularly, I think what stood out most to me as far as animation is concerned was the animation of the arrow when he shot it, and the way it moved, the way like the feather moved, like it was like it had tailwinds hitting it, and it was just kind of like zipping in, very very reminiscent of Guardians of the Galaxy, and the guy whistling
Yondu. Yeah. Yep.
Yondu. Yeah, it was very reminiscent
Mhm.
of that. I have to believe
Yep.
that had to have been some kind of inspiration. I could be mistaken, but I mean,
I don't know. Yeah,
technical thing.
do we think Miyazaki would have watched, any of the Marvel movies? Maybe.
I tend to believe not. Like,
Yeah.
like these silly, these simple-minded Americans and their box office fodder, their popcorn fodder.
Mm.
I can't watch. This isn't a real movie. I think he would very much fall on the Martin Scorsese end of that spectrum, though I could be mistaken.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it's like he's just drawing from the well, and
Yeah.
and it just
So I think
yeah.
that there wasn't anything you liked about this movie. But if you had to give me one thing that you felt like was positive about this film, what would it be?
I did like the opening sequence. Miyazaki was playing around with some different type of. He was playing around with a different animation style. It was more kind of like look more like a painting. When Mahito is running through the crowd trying to get to the
Yeah.
fiery
Yep.
furnace of a hospital where his mom is, alleged to be,
Mm.
and it kind of gave it a surreal quality. I was like, okay, maybe this movie's going somewhere. Maybe he's really trying to make an artistic statement with this movie.
Man.
And so I like that
Sadly,
opening
we
scene.
went there again.
Yeah, it reminded me of Grave of the Fireflies, which is a Ghibli movie, I believe, but it's not a Hayao Miyazaki movie.
Mm,
In fact, as I understand it, Grave of the Fireflies, if anybody has ever heard of it, um, if you've watched it, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't watched it, like mentally and emotionally prepare yourself just to be completely soul crushed because you'll probably only be able to watch it once. But Grave of the Fireflies, which is just a tale of a brother and sister who are trying to navigate their way in, World War II, Japan, in Tokyo during the United States bombing raids. It's just the story of a boy and his cute, the cutest little sister you've ever seen in your life, right? And that just makes everything that happens just all the more like gut wrenching and heartbreaking. But
yeah.
it was a double feature. It was Grave of the Fireflies, and then like so that you don't jump out of a window, you don't jump off of a roof. Here's Totoro. Yay! It's so fluffy and nice and kind and easy on the eyes, and just kind of you can just kind of enjoy it passively as you wipe away the tears from the first movie you just watched. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
this movie, where I thought it was going, was more in that direction.
Mm, mhm.
And maybe I thought that it,
Became an amalgam of a
well,
lot of things.
yeah, it just turned into like a just a rehash of things that I've already seen. And
Yeah.
so yeah, it felt too similar, and I zonked out. So I couldn't.
Mhm.
It didn't hold me.
Yeah. It's actually amazing that you brought up, Grave of the Fireflies because, uh, that was made by Isao Takahata, and that is Miyazaki's granduncle. So, this
Oh
film, The
no.
Wizard, that wound up being The Wizard, and so,
Interesting.
overall, here's my thoughts when it comes to the movie. Well, I'll continue the discussion, not my thoughts, but the themes. Yeah, he like I was saying before, there are a lot of personal elements in this movie, and yeah, there's a personal element of his relationship with Isao Takahata, who's the wizard who made established the world, is essentially established, and was a part of Ghibli animation and making animation that he kind of wound up coming in obviously and joining and be a part of as well. I guess the Heron was someone else named Suzuki. I don't know too much about that person. I'd have to look it up. Um, but apparently, yeah, this film has a lot of deeply personal elements to it. He wound up losing his mother. His father was involved in creating fighter plane components, back in the war. So this apparently is like the most personal film that he has made, and overall, he
Mm.
kind of like avoided having as many direct personal elements in this story. So
See, now I
I
feel
can't
bad. I'm like, I feel bad because like I was like, oh, I'm like
No, no,
crapping
don't
on
feel bad.
I'm crapping on this man's swan song that was like you know, here's my life, you guys. Hope you like it. And I'm like, this movie is
Yeah, yeah.
boring. I'm like, oh, come on. Now I feel like a bum.
Yeah. No, no, don't feel bad. Okay, so it's interesting. It reminds me of us having watched the Scorsese film, Killers of the Flower Moon. We
Mm-hmm.
didn't know how much of that film was literal, how much of it was dramatized. This film reminds me of a similar kind of a thing. This is way more dramatized. This is taking a lifetime of experiences, and specific relationships and specific important moments in Miyazaki's life, and telling it in a story in a different way, but having those elements present. And I think in both instances, you still have to package it, for the audience. Now, maybe his opinion is like, I didn't make this movie for nobody except myself, and maybe my family to pass down some thoughts and feelings. And if that's the case, man's able to do what he wants to do. I'm sure along the way he's like wants to tell a story that people are able to understand. But apparently even some of the people that he was inspired by, some of grandchildren, or at least one grandson of one of the people that he was kind of, yeah, taking inspiration from, or pulling memories from, felt like he didn't understand the film's messaging either. So I do think there's a responsibility on a filmmaker, whether you care or not. But like, for everybody consuming the medium, I think we would want to feel as if we can understand what he's going for. And I think he wants to pass along understanding. I think he would want to pass along, um, experiences, and to present it in a way in which others are able to experience, or consider thoughts and feelings and emotions that he did at one point in time, which I do think comes up and does come across within the film. But could there have been a better way for him to have packaged it? Could he have written it in a better way? Could someone else have helped him? Could it have been? Yeah, I think I understand where you're coming from, and that you felt as if it was just a compilation of prior works, prior things, and the story and the way it was developed and the way that it was told did not hold your attention, and potentially did not convey the themes and emotions in a way that in the best way that it could, or a better way than it could. There wound up being, if we had 10 different variations of this storyline, this would have fallen on the low end of the versions that would have um, touched you, the versions that would have taken you on that journey and taken you through those feelings in an engaging way. Whether you were like on a high or you were on a low throughout the movie, it just didn't convey the things that he was wanting to potentially. But well, yeah, yet again, I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes when it comes to, yeah, conveying one's emotions and experiences in story, like, if there is going to be a perfect way to get that across. And I think about myself, various moments that I've gone through in life, various losses I've experienced as well, and will inspire me to do works. I don't know if I will be able to accurately convey those thoughts and emotions to everybody that would wind up consuming the medium.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Like sometimes if in fact it is deeply personal, is it the case that the artist, I don't know. This is like, now I'm trying, it's weird. I feel like I have to psychoanalyze Hayao Miyazaki. I'm like, man, I don't want to do that. I don't know what his mind state was. Um Honestly, like the impression that I get is that he is a consummate consummate and deeply accomplished visionary animation pioneer director, and his shelf is full of awards that are all very well deserved.
Mm,
And I think he was either in his late 70s or just turned 80, probably like 78, 79, when they started making this movie or animating the movie. And it's like, yeah, he wanted to make another movie. He felt like he had another one in him, but I just get the feeling he was. I just see a man who's tired, and although he wants to continue going, um, yeah, like it's hard to come up with something that's new, that's original, a novel concept, especially when you've cranked out so many novel concepts already, right? At a certain point, like, oh, what else do I do? I mean, this is why it sometimes takes years for musicians to put together a body of work, to put an album.
mm,
You might be doing a whole lot of recording, but everything that you record isn't always fit for public consumption, or it's not it's not the image or the sound that you want to put out there as a finished final product. And so I don't know. It's a strange call.
Mm,
I can't call it. I guess I should say. I just when I saw it, I was like, man, he must be tired. He must be
mm,
exhausted,
mm,
and like because he was tired and because he was exhausted, because he's an elderly old man, it's entirely understandable. I don't fault the man. I mean, do you
no,
know how I mean,
no,
we all know how hard it is. You are a professional in the animation industry. You know how hard it is to make these movies and how much work goes in and just how much labor goes in to making, all of these movies. And I've watched enough documentaries. I've studied, and I have a deep appreciation for just how long these days are, how long these weeks are, and you're just cell after cell animation, going back, trying something else, going back, fixing this, reanimating that,
yeah,
editing this.
mhm,
I mean, all of that just takes an incredible toll. Like I encourage anybody go watch any of the NHK documentaries. Watch the Spirited Away documentary. Watch any of the other Hayao Miyazaki documentaries. Go find like an Akira DVD or Blu-ray and watch the making of Akira from 1987. You know, and just look at just the crazy amount of dedication, the crazy amount of detail that goes into everything. And I mean, he's been doing that basically his entire adult life, and he's been in top form his entire adult life. I mean, at a certain point, it's like, man, I can't. Let me just again. I don't know that he was doing this or doing this. If he was doing it, was he doing it consciously, subconsciously? Does he think that he was doing this at all? I don't know any of that. I'll leave the psychoanalysis to somebody else. But maybe just subconsciously, he's like, all right, well, I know this worked in this movie. Let me take that element. And I know this really went over in this movie. Let me just take that element. And whether he was trying to or not, you know, that's how it comes across because he was just exhausted and trying to come up with new ideas and new ways of telling a story. Like that's hard work, even for the most accomplished storytellers, even for the most accomplished animators. And that's just what comes across to me when I watch this. It's just I see a man who's tired and ended up, whether he wanted to or not, whether he was trying to or not, just falling back on on things that he's already done before. And so that was just my takeaway. That's how I feel when I watched this movie, when I was able to kind of focus on it. Yeah.
hmm.
Does that make sense?
No, it does make sense.
Okay. Because I'm not even sure I understand what I just said. So, oh man. But yeah, that's kind of my takeaway from it.
Hmm,
Just a natural consequence of a long life lived, a
hmm,
long and incredibly productive life, an incredibly accomplished life.
yeah. Yeah, I do think that that's certainly, an element to this film and for it not working for you, and even on various degrees not working for me. Um, yeah, I just think that, I mean, beneath all of it, and what you've highlighting is like the difficulty of storytelling, the difficulty of crafting a story. I think that within it, his way of approaching storytelling and basically like having animation done as he's still avoiding things out and getting through the story and working straight ahead. I mean, the amount of hits that he's had has been a testament to his ability to understand storytelling, period. Uh,
Right.
as he's going along, but I know it's taken a while for this to be made. I just tend to think that now I've heard a writer, what was it, Brandon Sanderson, describe writers as either architects or gardeners. Gardeners will have started the world, and the world goes and grows on its own, and they tend to things along the way. So the world leads into various different directions, and the author is just kind of doing some touches here and there, but trying to let the world express and the characters express themselves in the way that need to be expressed. Versus the other hand, architects being like um, Harry Potter's J.K. Rowling, having thought of everything and had a massive grid and not Venn diagram, but just like the
Yeah,
entire
that
free
that
branch
thought
to
tree.
understand
Yeah,
the entire
that thought
story.
for sure.
Yeah. Miyazaki is, I think, definitely a gardener. And I think the amount of times he's had hits while he's been gardening a project, because yeah, I mean, within animation, there are rewrites and reanimations and things all along the process of stuff. It's amazing that happened to all the '90s animations. It just happens all the time. But if you have you run into the problems of, well, you paint yourself into the corners by spending crazy amount of money and time without having everything figured out, without having just grinded the story, which sounds terrible, but having deciphered and puzzled the story together in a package before you wind up jumping into things. Um, it's just, yeah, it's the same as straight ahead animation, where you're not necessarily doing keyframes. You're not planning out all your keyframes. You're like animating potentially even on ones, and you wind up getting this beautiful, very fluid, sometimes often very dynamic animation from that work. But having that planned it ahead, like, you run the risk of it being sometimes incoherent or not being as time efficient and cost efficient and all that as possible. So I think the element here was the story, my personal regard, was not necessarily not told in a way that was as best packaged to get some of the themes and emotions and across the audience and have the greatest pacing. And yeah,
Mhm.
um I think it's if anything, it's just a highlight of, like I've said like twice before, it just highlights the fact that he's had these so many successes across his career, when he approaches storytelling in that way, has been has been amazing. So the fact that every now and then you're gonna wind up having things that aren't as amazing if you're approaching storytelling in that way. Um, who knows? Maybe there is not. There couldn't have been a more perfect way for him to really tell this story. This is the space that he was in. This is the story that he told, and how much more time would he have had to have workshopped it to get into a perfect condition? Would it have been another decade? Would he have been in the headspace for? Yeah, yeah. I don't know that there's an answer for
Yeah.
how this movie could have been better, what it would have taken. Maybe it's that he is, because it's so personal, the sole person with like the cipher to truly appreciate this film as much as or understand this film as much as it, like, you would want it to be understood. Again, I'm putting words into his mouth, but yeah, or into his mind. That's my guess that um I don't know, he might be the one person that could understand this. And I can understand, like I said but earlier, if I were to create something inspired by stories and events and, you know, gains and losses throughout my life, I have to understand that I might be the only one that can, like, truly experience and be gratified or understand that project. Just because no one else is living in my head. You got to do as much as you can to convey that world and those things from your head. But yeah, sometimes it's not going to work out
That
fantastic, or it's not going to be an easy solution.
yeah, you saying that brings to mind the documentary that's on Amazon. That features Hideaki Anno of Neon Genesis Evangelion fame, and just the struggles he had with conveying and expressing his ideas. and he went through so many versions of Evangelion, like the original 26 episode run, and then the OAVs, and then he made like the kind of like the rebirth, the redo, um, like the four movies that kind of like retell the story all over again. And it took
The
all of that
rebuild.
for him to, yeah, the rebuild. Yeah, it took all of that in order for him to kind of like really solidify conceptually what he wanted.
Yeah.
And if you watch the documentary of the last film that he's making, I mean, he spent hours, days, weeks trying to get it conceptually. And then he had like a rough cut. And luckily he had people in his circle that were like, yeah, this isn't quite right. This isn't coming together.
Mm.
And he had to go away for like, I think it was like 3 months or something like that, or like, I don't know, some like multiple weeks just by himself and just kind of retooled the whole thing, came back. And that last movie is a banger. It's a banger for a Evangelion movie with just crazy amounts of lore and details, and it's, you know, it's kind of
Yeah.
esoteric and hard to follow. It's Evangelion, but as far as Evangelion is concerned, and as Evangelion goes, I mean, that final movie is like his opus, and all the things that I was confused about were resolved in the end of that. Now, you know, I don't think that Hayao Miyazaki is going to go back and try to reworkshop this movie and retool it to something, you know, I may be in the vast minority of the opinion, but yeah, I mean, it does speak to like, man, if this is something deeply personal, it almost becomes more difficult to like convey your lived experience, your own feelings in a way that other people can relate to and can kind of like grasp visually. So, with that said, here's an interesting question. Who do you think this
Yeah.
movie is for? Who would most enjoy this movie? I have a thought. I want to hear what you have to say first,
Hmm.
kind of as we wrap this up.
Who would most enjoy this film? I think it's difficult for me to say specifically who. I can't think of it having a specific target demographic. I mean, outside of people who enjoy animation, which is almost, it's maybe too reductionist now I think about it.
Hmm.
Because, yeah, it's another form of storytelling, you know, animation, movies. But I don't think it's right to just be like, well, because this form that story is taking, those people that enjoy that would be the only people that can enjoy this film, or even that because people enjoy that type of medium, they should enjoy this film.
Hmm.
Hmm.
Okay, so here's what I would say. I have one audience in mind, and that audience is simply if you've never watched a Ghibli movie before, start
Hmm.
with this one because it only gets better from here. You start with this one, you watch any other Ghibli Hayao Miyazaki movie, you're like, oh my goodness, this man is amazing, right? If you can get through this first one, like, okay, that was fine, whatever, and then you watch Spirited Away, bro, your mind's gonna be blown just sky high. Like you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe
Hmm.
what this man was capable of, you know?
Hmm.
You watch this and you watch Princess Mononoke, you watch Kiki's Delivery Service, you watch Porco Rosso, you watch Castle in the Sky, you watch Nausicaa, you watch like if you watch Ponyo, you know, like you watch any of these movies, you're like, man, this guy's amazing. This is
Hmm.
this person is a genius. I want to be Hayao Miyazaki's friend. Like that's who this movie is for. If you're a
Yeah.
latecomer to Ghibli, I would say watch this movie first. Watch it at 1.5 speed. That's
Nice.
probably good. 1.5 to 1.7 speed run this bad boy. Watch it, you know, and then you'll just be able to like. This should not be the last Ghibli movie you watch. This should be the first one, and then watch all the other ones in the order that it interests you, and then you're gonna have a grand old time. That's what I. That would be my recommendation. Anybody who has
Okay.
not seen a Ghibli
Yeah.
movie, start with this one, and then watch Howl's Moving Castle, and then watch whatever other ones you want to watch. It's fine
Mhm.
in any order you want. In any order you want to.
I don't know, man. Like, it might be a difficult thing to point people towards the weakest of a series of films.
True.
That
Like I said,
said, you're still saying
1.75
the
speed.
qualities.
Yeah.
1.5, yeah. But yeah, I see that you're also saying like this is still baseline a Ghibli film. So still baseline
It is.
would be impressive to anybody. So if this is their first experience, that's already pretty phenomenal. But going beyond that, um, that there's there are higher heights to climb. I think I would say now having a moment to think about it again. I would say anybody that is curious about a film centered on grief and where to go from there, which is part of the reason why the original title was so good. How do you live? Um, and so appropriate for the story.
Yeah.
So yeah, people that are interested in a story told about that, or I mean, it would be people that have gone through it and are curious to see how it's represented. And then beyond that, yes, people that are just wanting to check out a story that has from a beautiful animation studio.
Right. It's like there's people in the world that, they want to watch all of the Christopher Nolan movies. They want to watch all the Quentin Tarantino movies. They're going to watch all of the Hayao Miyazaki movies. I'm like, that's cool. Ghibli, I mean, yeah, they are them or whatever kids are saying these days. Like, they're the ones, like
They are the
they're the
ones, yeah.
premier animation studio, Vanguard in Japan. And so, yeah, do that. Just start with this one. And then
Mm,
it's all uphill from there. Yeah. And that includes some of the other non Hayao Miyazaki Ghibli films. Some of them are okay. Don't watch Earthsea. That one is terrible.
mm,
Terrible.
mm.
I mean, his son directed that one, and his dad basically roasted him for it. Like, don't watch that one. It's
Yeah.
terrible. And again, it's based on a book by somebody else. I'm telling you, man, like, these people need to have their own vision. And we see that clearly with Makoto Shinkai, right? The spiritual successor to Hayao Miyazaki, for all intents and purposes. He has his stories to tell, and he flourishes. He flourishes when he tells his stories. And so I want these guys to tell their stories their own way, be Japanese, and don't rely on anybody else's prior work unless you're gonna like completely like redo it and do a complete like film adaptation of it. But don't you? I mean, if you're gonna take themes and ideas, like no, just like do your own thing.
Hmm.
And so, yeah. Any closing thoughts? Any final reflections before we close this one out?
So earlier I had said one of the things that I wanted more in the film was the some character dynamics, some time between characters. And I didn't necessarily highlight what it was. I did say, here, I'll say just now, I wanted him to spend more time with his stepmother, um, who he was going on the journey to find, to help, to essentially build a relationship with. And that stepmother turned out to be his mother's sister, which also would be his aunt at the same time. But we don't get hardly any time between the two of them. I think there is some beauty to. She's immediately loving and helpful to him. She actually rescues him in an important moment of the storytelling. And I think that does inspire him to pursue helping her eventually. As once that moment comes up, and I think there is a cool moment where he then like decides to allow her to be his mother now, but Yeah, it's too bad that we don't get to see very much interaction between the two. And maybe that was an intentional thing. Maybe he just wanted to be like, this was the start of his relationship with his stepmother as his mother, not disrespecting his mother's um either a memory or fact that his mother that passed was his biological mother. And within that, actually, man, we find out, yeah, the very, very last moment before they go through the portals that Himi is his mom. And yet again, this kid he smiles at her. He warns her and he smiles at her and they share a look, they share a glance. But man, with him having pursued finding his mother, I wanted more time there too. But I guess thinking about it, would it have undermined the new reality that he has with his stepmother to have like reforged time a relationship with his mother? I don't think that it would have. I just yeah. So those amongst the two most like important relationships in his life, I wanted more time with. But I guess yeah, I guess he wanted that to be kept to a minimum because Mahiko needed to go on the journey of grappling with their loss of his mom and the building of a new relationship. But yeah, if I think it falls into personal preference, but I think it would have been for me, it would have been stronger had he spent more time with those characters. And I think there's overall the film there's something very beautiful about just tackling that issue. Having lost my mom, this past year, um, thankfully I did get to spend essentially entire lifetime. Going by number of years, Jesus was alive as a man on earth. 33 years, got to spend that much time with my mom. Um, I think I did appreciate this story being told on the topics of loss of a important loved one and their life.
Mm, mm,
Uh,
I see.
and I think it's powerful to be able to convey that story to audience of all ages. Um, and yeah, I think it's part of the reason why I can't be 100% like I wouldn't say not 100% critical. I think I respect the film even if I can agree with not having enjoyed it as much as I could have compared to the other Ghibli films. Um, I think there is something special in and of just like the theming and the tackling of that theming and representing it and it not even having been something that was perfectly figured out. I think there's something beautiful even within that, because there isn't going to be a perfect journey that people will take along the way, struggling with
Mm,
these things.
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think that's an interesting take on it. Um, hmm, yeah, okay. So yeah, I mean, I think you were able to take things out of it that I wasn't, but I think that's interesting. Um, for those of you listening at home, yeah, let us know what you think about the movie in the comment section. If you've seen this movie and you agree with me or you disagree with me, or you agree with Josiah, or you take a different view, yeah, let us know what you're thinking. We would be very interested to see how people's uh, views on the film, their opinions, their takeaways, either line up with ours in parallel, or completely intersect, or they're just completely divergent. And so, yeah, I think with that, we will conclude our review of um, The Boy and the Heron. Stay tuned. I think our next review will be of Godzilla -1, Gojira -1. Um, and so I'm excited to give that movie a review. We may have a guest contributor, so stay tuned for that. And yeah, I think we're gonna wrap it up right here. Um, my name is Austin.
And I'm Josiah.
We are the Super Cinema Bros. Thank you for joining us once again. We're happy and thankful that you are joining us in our conversation on film, and we look forward to seeing you the next time. So until then, God bless you, and you be good out there, all right?
God bless you guys.
All right, peace.
Peace out.